this morning. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Priyanka Jain and Puneet Sharma from A-Ring, and they're coming in from the West Coast to join us today. They also very graciously gave some workshops in the past 2 days that were very warmly received. So without me getting in the way any longer, we just turn it over to them. You're in good hands, and enjoy.
Thank you, Park. You guys can hear me in the back? Well, probably this is not needed, but welcome all. It's our pleasure and delight to be here. Thank you, Carl, again, and thank you, Eric, for having us. So today we're going to share some of our thoughts and a framework around how do you really get the power of predictive analytics, or for that matter, analytics, in the business, and how do you put that? And so you get that by putting it in the context of business. If you align things in the business context, that's when you get the most power of analytics. So if you want to say something about us, here's our tweet, #DataDecisions @AnalyticsQueen. Myself, Priyanka, I'm the CEO of A-Ring. We are an analytics training company. My experience in the last 10 years of doing analytics with companies like PayPal and Adobe. And Puneet, 15 years of experience in analytics, in mostly driving impact through analytics in the marketing and product organization. So without further ado, this is what we are hoping to cover today. How do you approach solving a business problem? And given that you know what you're working on, how do you communicate that, and how are you relevant to senior leadership? They have an agenda, they have some priorities. How can you be more relevant to the leadership? And if you are in a position where you are heading up an analytics organization, how do you set up that agenda in the most optimized manner? So this is what our intent is for today. So with that, by the way, all of this would be available in the PowerPoint format to you guys, but also it is available as white paper on our website, aring.com/whitepaper.html. So don't need to take notes, let's interact, have fun, so we can get the most out of that. And so by the way, just stop us anywhere, anything is not making sense, let us interact. It's not a workshop, but let's get the most out of it. Let's make something interactive. So the 3 pillars of analytics approach is our recipe for how you make analytics impactful in the business. So the first one is measurement framework. What do we mean by measurement framework? How am I doing? The first question when you're looking at it, you're a business owner, you're a department owner, you're an individual contributor. How am I doing? Right? So how do you define how am I doing? And based on how you're doing, what you define as your the metrics, success metrics, how can predictive analytics help you get there? Second is portfolio analysis. What are my business drivers? What do I fundamentally understand about my business that once I understand the levers of my business, I can say, here's where I want to focus because this is a problem area. Here's a great opportunity for me. Let me focus here. So as a result of identifying first, how am I doing? And the second layer, what drives how am I doing? You start getting to the details of how you can start drawing impact through analytics. And the third one is customer analysis. Customer is the center, whether you're B2B or B2C, is the center of your universe. What do my customers need? What are they saying? What is their wish list? Do I understand them? Do they have custom needs? Is there a way I can articulate my message in a different way for different customer sets? Some of them are more sophisticated, some are just beginning with our product, whatever that product is, right? So customer analysis is the third pillar. So there are 3 pillars of analytics approach. Measurement framework, portfolio analysis, and customer analysis. And the way you would go about doing it is somewhat iterative, right? You would start at the highest level of your business, at 20,000 foot view, right? How am I doing? You get to the drivers, but these are all, think about it as a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, you're discovering all these 3 aspects. And then once you've understood some aspects of your customer, you'll go back to the measurement framework. So it kind of goes back and goes down the pyramid, if you can get the visuals. from 20,000 foot view to all the way, it percolates down to whatever you are working on at the detail level. As you get incremental understanding of your business. So with that, measurement framework. So let's say in our daily life, we were going from, we are based out of San Francisco, so you can see the bias here. Let's say we were going from San Francisco to LA, right? And it's like a small, is it a PD booth? Small car. But let's say we all were going in there, and I say, hey guys, come on, we're going. So what is your question? We're asking you, where are you going? Oh yeah, just to LA. Huh. All right, so we all get in the car and we are driving, and then we ask, ourselves, okay, how would I know if I've succeeded in this, right? If my goal is to go from San Francisco to LA, how would I know? How would I measure myself that I've made it, right? Is it the color of the car, mileage, the horsepower, engine horsepower? What is relevant here? Any thoughts? Can you repeat? That you reached LA. Your goal is to reach LA. You've reached LA. Now let's say my goal is to go from San Francisco to LA in the most cost-effective manner. What is the relevant metric here? Is it the color of the car? Does it matter? The color of the car? Is it yellow or red? Well, you may get part of the cost, but okay, maybe relevant. What is it? Going back to the SMART goal, if you are familiar with that, getting it more specific, to go from San Francisco to LA in the most cost-effective manner. What would be the relevant metric?
Shortest number of miles.
Mileage and shortest number of miles. So San Francisco to LA, let's say the miles are fixed, right? Let's say we have one way. But if the miles are not fixed, okay, what is the shortest route I can take? And what's the mileage?
Least traffic.
Least traffic, right? Gas it consumes. Yeah. So all these things. And sorry, what?
I was going to say price of flights.
What? Some out of box thinker here. We're in the car here. No, great point. So the point is, depending on what your goal is, your metrics will change, and that's what we're talking about. So in our daily life, how we measure success in our business life, you kind of have to align your metrics, the success metrics, to the goals and priorities. If it is the fastest way, then how good is my mileage doesn't matter. But if it's the cheapest way, mileage is relevant, right? So depending on what my goal is, the metrics would be, you would define different metrics. And it's not like one metric is worse versus, it's just that it's aligned to a different goal, right? And the other thing which I wanted to add was our financials in our business, for example. Our financials is the only way to measure success. No. What do you think some others are? No, I mean, I'm not picking on you, but
Customer loyalty.
Customer loyalty. Comfort. So these are aspects which I'm hearing is more sounding like customer metrics, right? So there are lots of ways to think of the success. It's just not one way. As long as you're keeping it clear and making your goals and priorities very specific, very smart goals and priorities, and making sure however way you're measuring is aligning to that. I've seen in my life and in 10 years of doing analytics and before, lots and lots of dashboards, irrelevant dashboards. You're measuring that, you don't drive your business with that. Nobody looks at it. They're created, they stand, they're in the mark somewhere, right? So, and the reason why it happens is because, somebody designs the dashboard and somebody is running the business, not necessarily having a conversation and figuring out, here's where I'm going, how do I measure what is relevant? So, this is a bit of an idea. This is just to kind of show and kind of give you an idea of, you can do top-down financials. One way of doing measurement framework is you start with saying, what is the most relevant? So this is a live example from a business unit where Puneet was part of, North America Marketing. And the product marketing the head said, margin is what I'm going for. So if margin is what you're going for, then you kind of, my parity is on the right side equation, revenue minus cost minus loss of my margin. What is my revenue a function of? Revenue is a function of merchant and how much my merchant, what is the engagement, what is the average volume or average revenue per merchant and so on. So you can start seeing that you can, in top-down financials are one of the very easy and good way of saying how does my metric, my top thing which I'm interested in percolates all the way down. And let's say my department where I was sitting was cross-border. If I was charged with leading cross-border, then I know exactly, and then by the way, this will percolate and this will translate into some equation where you start understanding if transaction margin is what I'm going for, if I increase my cross-border from 30% to 40%, 30% to 31%, 1% increase in cross-border would mean incremental X% in margin. So you start with this effort and then you percolate it down to your numbers. And then if I'm leading cross-border, I understand what am I going for, right? Top-down financials is one way. The other way is balanced scorecard. How many of you guys are familiar with balanced scorecard? Okay, quite a few. So balanced scorecard in the most fundamental way is a way of balancing the financials with the customer in view. Financials is like almost inside out view, how good am I doing? And customer in view is how good the customers think I'm doing. In some ways, whatever it's loyalty, satisfaction, however have you. So, and again, it's the eye chart, it's a chart borrowed from Balanced Scorecard Institute. But for a credit card company, you have financials and then you have customer in view, whether it's improved brand image or increased market share. And then you have your internal process and your HR and learning basically lined up to what you're going for, what is important for your business, right? So this is available. This will be available, so don't necessarily write it. But the idea is here, if you are going for them, understanding your overall balanced scorecard percolated through the organization. If you're going for improving marketing, then what you can do is you can go to the initiative level and say, my initiative is improving marketing, right? And you can do it, you can improve marketing by N ways, right? You can do better targeting. I don't need to market to 1 million customers. I'll go for the top 30%. And you can define your top either ways using simple logic, analytics, business analytics, predictive analytics, whatever have you. You can segment. I'm going to make my customer's experience better. So I'm going to customize my offering to the different segments. You can also do, 1,000 people land on my website, but 100 of them convert, I have 10% conversion. If I make that 100 to 120, without driving more traffic, I've optimized, I've driven more numerator basically, and I've improved my marketing, right? So if improving marketing was your initiative to different means, what is the metric here?
Pipeline.
Pipeline is the metric?
Marketing.
Marketing pipeline. How would you measure, if I was looking for one metric? ROI, right? Because it's talking about somehow optimizing that marketing effort. And so the marketing effort is, you can actually, if you look at if you were to draw up for any organization the revenue by marketing dollars, right? And it'll go like a linear curve, but at some point it starts curving out, flattening, or I don't know what happens. But it is almost a linear function initially. But what you're going for is a revenue optimized revenue at the optimized investment, right? So ROI. So if ROI was your initiative level metric, what you're going for, then you can kind of translate, okay, I'm going for increasing my revenue, decreasing my investment. My revenue is a function of number, let's say this is an acquisition, I'm sitting in part of the acquisition. Revenue is a function of number of people I acquire, multiplied by the revenue per acquisition, and acquisition is a function of blah, 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 right? So wherever you're at, you can do measurement frameworks of this kind, where either you do top-down financials, initiative level financials, or balanced scorecard, or some other ways. Ultimately, they fall in these kind of broad three buckets. Does that make sense so far? So we figured out how am I doing? We figured out one aspect, and
so let us share an example of how we took a situation which was totally dysfunctional
in the measurement space and made it up to a place where it had like huge impact in the organization. So I was working in a financial services company, I joined the collections group a long time back, and the first initiative I was tasked with was senior management don't have enough information to make decisions and don't have it readily available. So could you solve for it? And there are also multiple reports talking about the same information, so could you reconcile that as well? So the first question I asked was, how many reports do you currently have? Said we don't really know, could you just inventory that for us? And I said, okay, look at it. So they have 512 reports. So I said, so, and that's not enough, right? Yeah, it's not enough. So we tried to reconcile and go the painful route, and we quickly figured out it's not working out. So then we took a step back and said, okay, what are the key metrics to really run your business, right from senior management level to the operations manager who's managing the collection centers. And we collected requirements, worked with IT to create an infrastructure, and we basically created reports from scratch. There were only 12 reports that were required to run the entire business. And then of course we decommissioned the 500 reports after shutting them off for 6 months, and nobody really trying or hitting us, and we survived. So there were two benefits. I mean, obviously we reconciled, the information was easily available, but just think of the maintenance required to manage 500 reports. And the questions that you field every day, why is this report saying X versus Y? All of those efforts were sorted out by following the approach of why you want to measure what you're trying to measure, how does that align to your goals and strategies, what decisions do you need to make, and what information is required. If you follow that approach holistically, you can really solve these problems.
So once you've figured out your measurement framework, that was your first step. Now now you can define whether your analytics effort or whether you're sitting in a predictive analytics team. Now you can define what is relevant. So let's say if I decrease my churn from 50 to 52%, decrease my churn from 50 to 30% to 25%. I was able to decrease churn, merchant churn from 30% to 25%. That meant $5 million incremental dollars or $50 million incremental dollars. Then you can start doing your ROI analysis of my churn model, predictive model. If you were to build, has an investment of X, and you have a revenue incremental of 5 or 50, whatever have you. You're starting to put, and you know what you need to work on. If activation is important, you can do activation model. There are all sorts of segmentation, engagement model, fraud model. So you're basically putting the effort. Let's say your organization can make 5 models, effectively make 5 models in a year, right? You're choosing the right 5 ones because now you understand exactly what that ROI is. Where whatever you work on, how does that percolate to the top line? Yeah. Cool. So with that, let's move to portfolio. Again, bit of an eye chart. The idea is to say, do I understand my P&L? Do I understand what drives my profit and losses? What are the drivers of my business? This is an example. It's all made up numbers. Let's say you have 4 products, and you start getting a sense of, oh, okay, how does that look in terms of, what is the biggest growth here? Look, my growth is coming mostly from Z. Although Z is only 6% of my business. How will you measure that, right? You start getting sense of, if you're looking for P&L drivers, very high cost for X, Y, and Z. These are two products, X, Y, and Z. Very high cost. So if I were, I'm trying to understand my net sum, these are very high cost products for me. Losses are very high. Not every business has loss component. In our case, we did. And so understanding the loss aspect of what is driving, B and X, Y tends to be a little bit more lossier than the others, and so on. So you basically start understanding. You're starting to peel your business and understand. Okay, I understand I have $1 million in revenue, but where is that $1 million coming from? What is driving that $1 million? So I can start, focusing and defocusing relevantly. There are lots of ways of focusing. One of my favorite ways is 2x2s. I love 2x2s. And what it basically enables is any 2 metrics which are orthogonal, meaning they are independent of each other. So, for example, growth and profit, which segment or which, in this case, these are product lines, what is growing and how profitable they are. And then you can also use the third, bubble charts are really good for these, this third aspect of what is the size of the business, so in this case, the volume, to reflect the size of the bubble. So you can start saying, this is really small, although it's high growth, it's really small. Product B, wow, high growth, high profit, it's in the golden segment. And it doesn't, you can do this exercise with any two metric, right? Any two orthogonal metric. And in fact, do more than one, do quite a few, and you start understanding your business. Wow, look at this, my product B is such, my product B, look at how profitable product G is. It's like way above average. These are the averages, way above average. But look, it's not growing that much. It's below growth, below average growth. You can do this over like a temporal. These are taggers. You can do it over a period of time and say, how is it going? How is the yearly? It's indexed to a certain year. How is the yearly looking like? If this is my average, look at this, and the colors are not obvious, but whatever that color is, let's say product B. This product B. How high this is, and for example, in the reds, look, it was growing and something happened. Right? You start seeing the fundamental dynamics of your business. You can add penetration, you can add, opportunity size, you can add all sorts of metrics to this set of 2x2s and start understanding at the product level, sub-product level, whatever those relevant, line level, feature level, whatever is relevant to your business. And so what happens is you start understanding where should I focus, and look at this product B, low growth, low profit. You start understanding where you need to be focused, as well as where the opportunities lies. Can I move my product AC to a golden quadrant by making them higher profit? What can I do? How can I improve the profitability of these two? What can I do for these and improve the growth aspect? How do I incite growth in these segments?
Okay. So before I actually share an example, I have a quick question. For your individual organizations, do you know what are the top 3 segments which have driven growth? Show hands. Okay. Not too surprising. So I was working in a very large financial services institution, and the first question when I was asked was, we don't really know what the drivers of growth have been in the last 3 years. We have a general sense, maybe it's A, B, or C. We have an intuition, we have a gut feeling, but we don't really know, and we definitely don't know how to quantify it. Like 30% is coming from A and 40% coming from B. So I said, yeah, that's fairly straightforward, right? I'll look at what the key products are, key channels are, and I look at the segments, and I look at the growth in the last 3 years, and I'll tell you. 2 weeks later, I came back. The expectation really was 0 from me. They didn't really expect to find anything new. They have been running the business for more than 10 years. But there were 3 surprising findings. So the first one was that the segments which were growing faster were the low margin segments versus the high margin segments which were slowing down. People didn't really understand that very well, and when it was really called out, management actually was very good in terms of taking action and changing the incentive structure so that the sales people actually started focusing on the high margin accounts. Fairly obvious, but unless you actually show it in a way that people realize that, oh, this is what is happening in terms of growth rates, they won't really focus. So that was the first surprising finding. Second was, I think the most surprising, at least for me, and people were shocked by this number, 40% of the growth was coming from a segment where not a single person was working on. No strategy, nobody was even thinking about that segment. 40% of the growth in the last 3 years. That's a shocking number. That's not 40% of revenues, but growth in the last 3 years. So obviously people were in a bit of a, perplexed. Why didn't we think of that before? Are you really sure? But after all the data questions were answered, people started taking that very seriously, and there's still efforts going on to look at that. The third one was something that got people's attention. It was very intuitive. Everybody knew that it had high profit margins. This was a segment which had, I can tell you this cross-border, this had 2x the profit margins than other products. One of the segments up, sorry. But there was no uniform strategy. There were individual some projects going on. And once this was actually brought to people's attention, we, through resources added and identified more than $100 million in incremental opportunities in this sector. The important thing to note is, by doing some very simple analysis, just doing a basic understanding of what is my portfolio, where is growth coming from, what are the key drivers, you can identify quick wins in a way that you might be actually surprised.
So once you've understood, your portfolio, how have you come to it with 2x2s and simple logic, how you have come to your portfolio, you understand your portfolio, you can very quickly start understanding, there's cost element, there's, cost is being driven by, high cost is driven by, let's say, credit card in our business, in PayPal's business. You can start understanding there's a loss element here, and you can start putting your analytics effort, whether it's predictive analytics or more simpler business analytics, towards that. So it's very clear that cost is a big driver. Can I understand what's driving my credit card usage? Right, so credit card driver model. Can I understand what's driving these losses? Can I reduce loss here? So fraud models, right? So same way, product B, for example, has, say your golden segment. Can I get more of these people who use product B? Can I incent people? Is there a path? Is there a next best product for these people, which is product B? And we actually did this model. It had a $20+ million impact nationwide. The department across the company, because we understood this is very important. This drives incremental revenue for us. This is where we need to focus. So without understanding first where it is that you need to focus, defocus opportunities, it's kind of hard to understand which analytics effort you should embark on. Once you have identified, first, how you're doing, secondly, your portfolio, what drives how am I doing, you start understanding where I should focus and how can I use predictive analytics in that context to drive the strategies around that. So with that, we come to customers. The first level of customers understanding is who are my customers. You can start with some simpler demographics profiling, needs. Do they have different needs? Are there different demographics, behavior? But you can quickly imagine, depending on every metric and how many levels they are, it becomes a huge n-by-n chart, right? And it stops being sensible. You can't make sense of it. Nobody can make sense of it, right? And so you can use advanced analytics techniques of combining all of these into meaningful clusters. So a lot of organizations have adopted, Adobe for example, I know, adopted this early on, where they have seven or odd key segments, and they have different strategies for these segments. They've understood their creative professional has a different need versus their hobbyist. The hobbyists who use Photoshop, Element, and Photoshop, they use it for a different reason versus, or different purpose, versus when the creative professionals, the web designer, the graphic designer, and they're using these products. How does it come? So you can basically use that aspect you can start with fundamental level of what's the average tenure of people in my business. Do you know that? What's the average churn rate? Is this going up or down? Things of that kind. You start with that, and you start getting into some meaningful clusters for your business. You can also use inputs from voice of customer. We used opinion labs and customer service verbatims and survey data. Market research is a great input to this effort. Competitive intelligence. You can start putting that information, tying it in to your segment level definition. The segment level definition which you will define here, you can start putting these other aspects. You basically either text mining or structured data collection, promoter detractor model. Are we doing well in satisfaction? What is driving that? You can start understanding what are they seeing, what do they need, and then.
So let me share an example of where it was done very effectively. I just want to call out one thing. This is not important, but it's critical if you're entering a new space, which you don't really know very well. Don't really know the customer's needs. So, financial services company which was giving loans in the subprime to the subprime customers wanted to move into the near prime and prime space, embedded credit customers. They really had no idea how to go about doing that because their products were not really competitive. They had a general sense because people are adopting their products, not taking the loans at the rates and the lines that they were offering. So the good thing was they realized that. Now they had an extensive mechanism of reaching out to consumers, voice of customers. They did extensive research, interviews with target customers, and they also did a lot of competitive intelligence. And especially if you're entering a new space, again, that's critical because you want to understand the needs and how they're being met today. Who are the competitors? What are they actually offering? What product would actually make sense? What are the gaps which nobody is addressing, and that's a sweet spot, right? And in some cases, you can come up with surprising findings as well. So in this case, it was mostly, we want higher lines, lower rates, very obvious things. And the company designed products and tested it out in the market. And again, it's very important to test things out before you roll out, especially if you're in any space. But the surprising thing was, surprising at least to the people who were working in marketing at that time, didn't think it was that critical, which was almost everybody said we want, so the model was, taking a step back, so the model was used to send direct mail to the customers. Customers used to then go to a retail branch. There were lots of retail branches all across the country, and then they used to get a check or some way of depositing money to their accounts. So the near prime customer said, we really don't want to go to the branch. We want to go to the internet, type in our information, and just have funds flow directly into our bank accounts. And he thought, okay, that shouldn't take a lot. He did a quick sizing and determined 2-person effort for 2 to 3 months. That was all that was required to set up the infrastructure. They had some basic infrastructure already set up. And the surprising finding was, all the mails that we sent in this target segment from that day onwards had a 25% lift in response. That's huge. That's millions and millions of dollars by just giving one more option to respond. But yeah, knowing your customers is really critical if you're entering a new market. But there will be some nuggets of information if you spend the time and effort that will actually be profitable for you.
So once you understand, as Steve is saying, once you understand your whichever way you come to that, competitive intelligence study, market research, your own analysis, you can start understanding where you should focus on, right? So these segments, for example, you understand these are very, very high growth segments. Can you monetize this segment? How would you monetize them? How do you move them towards the right? How do you retain these people and possibly clone this effect? Make this bubble bigger. How do you defocus? Right? These are, for example, let's say these are casual sellers. They are low profit and low value. What percentage of your marketing dollar or strategic dollar is going here? How can you defocus? How can you grow this one? It's really high. The spenders are spending, very high value. How can you grow this segment? What do they do? What is their, customized need? That once you meet them, they start growing. You have met their need and they start growing. So you can use historic value, for example, here, but you can also use predictive model here to do customer lifetime value. Another company which does, Adobe again, does customer lifetime value all the time. And the big advantage with a predictive model like that, customer lifetime value is basically saying, I'm going to predict for every merchant, every customer, I'm going to predict their value, net present value of, let's say, 3 years, far out. So that way, what happens is, if somebody became a merchant or became your subscriber or customer last month versus they've been with you 3 years, you can start comparing them. You can start comparing these two customers on the same place. Otherwise, tenure plays a role where there is a life cycle and so on and so forth. So this is another tool, another predictive analytics technique which is used for driving impact in your understanding of customers. And then you come to, I understand that now, I understand that I have to use use different strategy. I retain monetize, grow, focus. Exactly, what will I do? My tactical strategy here. And for example, for power sellers, I need to retain them. I have a retention strategy. How do I drive that? And so on. You may have a retention model. So you're putting your predictive analytics or other analytics effort aligned to exactly understanding who my customers are, what their needs are, what do I need to do differently now that I understand their needs, and start putting your efforts in that direction and quantify it, right? This is not, building a retention model might not be as ROI, the ROI may not be as good as fraud model, and you need to prioritize. You have an opportunity and a way to prioritize. You say, well, fraud model is right now more urgent because we are bleeding. We are losing bottom line like anything. So let's focus on that. So summarizing, 3 pillars of analytics, analytics approach, measurement framework. How am I doing? Are my success metrics, my KPI, my dashboard, are they truly reflecting how am I doing? Am I able to measure them? What are my business dynamics? What drives my business? Do I understand those levers? And how do I start? How do I start using predictive analytics or analytics within that context and for customer analytics? So with that, the lessons learned for us is that if you go through this approach, if you frame analytics and then start frame your business context and then start using analytics to drive decisions and understand your ROI, it can be very, very powerful. Growth intelligence, so you don't one day, tomorrow wake up and you say, I'm going to completely understand the 3 pillars of my business. You kind of go from growth intelligence to detail. You have to iterate quite a bit, and there's always test and learn. Your analysis may say something. You're going to have a way of trying to say, well, this is what I understood that churn, is driven by this. Let me, test my model, understand how it is being driven. So before we go to Q&A, you can download the white paper on airing.com/whitepaper.html. It's a little bit more detailed. We also, as I was sharing, we do analytics workshops, and the next one which is coming up is in Jan in San Francisco. So 2 days hands-on business analytics. We talk about the recipe of how do you get from data to decision. And if you're interested, here's a pin tab, which you can drop your business card in for a free raffle. And we are also hiring. So if you know of folks who are, in the analytics role and in that aspect, we'd love to hear them. Questions?
So like for the items that you wanted to defocus on, so how do you know if there's not like a dependency on other items? So I mean, for instance, like you might defocus on something, but that might affect other segments that are like on hyper, right?
Great question.
So let me respond to that because that was itching to talk about one point. So the most effective decisions are those in which the business owner, product, marketing, analytics sit down together and decide this is the right decision, because there will be knowledge sitting in one area which you don't have and vice versa. So the product person would say, there's a dependency. If I shut this down, my big other product which I'm planning on next year's launch cannot happen. So you really can't do that. The marketing person would say, hey, I know if I put $1 million on this, I can make it 10. You don't know that, but I know that. So the best decisions are those, get everybody together. And again, in this process also, it will be most effective if all the groups of people are actually collectively deciding to go after and following the measurement framework, etc. If one group starts doing it by themselves, they probably won't be as powerful.
And I'll add one more thing in addition to the very fair point. The other point is test and learn. You can always mitigate your risk and say, I have understood this by using analysis and competitive intelligence. Can I test it in market with a small rollout and see if it holds? Is my hypothesis holding? Is my understanding holding? And thereby you can take really, really bold steps, but you're mitigating your risk because you're testing it in a smaller population.
Yeah, the picture is nice and well, but usually the products are not as simple that the growth rate is static or constant, or their shelf life is infinite.
Sure.
Things get useless in this world very quickly.
Yes.
Right.
So the other chart should not be a static picture, it should be a little more dynamic.
Absolutely. There's a time component, there's also transition, there's migration. So as the idea is to understand the framework, and then for your own business, you have customized needs, different metrics, different needs. You know, there are businesses where, you know, in PayPal, for example, policy changes all the time. There are other businesses where products are there for a long time. Adobe only comes out with the next version of the product, but Photoshop has been there around, I don't know, 10 years. Acrobat has been there, what, 15 years? So, you know, there are different businesses have different dynamics. As long as you understand the framework, you can start driving decisions based on that, the data.
Can you say something about making sure that the metrics and the goals stay aligned across different layers within your organization? I mean, on the one hand, we have the IT versus marketing versus other, you know, finance, things like that. But you also have to keep momentum and corporate buy-in across different layers in the organization. Can you say anything to how metrics can be defined in different ways that help to keep that momentum, keep the buy-in?
Okay. Go to your iChat first. Sorry.
iChat?
Yeah. So this is a real example, and I want to take that. One way to look at it is if the ultimate metrics are defined at the most senior level, which is transaction margin, but the person who's working on cross-border is sitting here, and there are like 3 people working cross-border. How are they motivated to work on the goals that are being set at this level? So you have to make sure that the metrics are percolated all the way down to each individual level. And that's the most ideal. You'll probably have to start at the top, but then as you keep on going down, maybe this is a division which is focused on this cost. There is a smaller group which is focused on just, you know, take rates, and there's maybe 2 people working on just cross-border within this take rate. So if you are able to have this sort of, I don't know, it's a waterfall, whatever this chart which percolates down to a metric, and then personal goals should be aligned. So my annual goal, suppose, should be aligned towards how I move this metric. And if you're able to do that, you can be like very successful in motivating people at the most junior level as well as the most senior level.
Yeah, your goal should be like, that is directly responsible.
Yeah. So we've already proven this. Let's suppose we actually have this through analysis, and we know that change in here drives change in here. That's why it's on this chart, and it's like 20-odd metrics. 20-odd metrics is definitely, we can manage that. Anything more than that becomes a bit too complex. So yeah, but if my goal is supposed to focus on activating merchants and I'm cross-border, I won't be motivated. I have to be aligned, and it has to be relevant at my level. So yeah.
And I'll add two more things. Sometimes you may have organizations which are very metric driven, but this is blank. You don't know exactly what's going on here. I've seen it a lot in my experience. But still, if you think about it, these are relationships. You can still, even if this is missing within the department which is above or percolating through, you can still say what percentage, you can still draw a relationship between top line for the business and what your goals are. And you can still draw a relationship, and sometimes you can also draw a relationship which are not these hard lines, but these are proxies. You have things which you can't necessarily measure financially. You have to do dotted lines and find relationship and drive it.